For those of you who don't know me, I am Carla Spataro. I am the editorial director of Philadelphia Stories. I'm also the MFA program director here at Rosemont College. McGlinn, for whom the fiction prize was named, was our nonfiction editor at Philadelphia Stories for a long time. I would like to say thank you one more time to Tom McGlinn and his family for supporting the prize, making it possible for all. Tom is right there.
I don't savor the work of judging. I'm a teacher, and what I love to do, I love to read, and I love to look at work, and I love to think. I love to be like a coach as a teacher. I think the job of a writing teacher is to be a coach and to see what the potential of the work is. And so it's a little tough for me to judge a contest because I see the potential of the work and I see what I want it to be. But I buckled down with the help of my mother, who I made read all the stories, and so we could talk about them. And it was really fun to read them with Mom.
I retired a couple of years ago, and I've been writing nonstop. And I've had some publication, this being my first print publication. And it is such a validation of this return. I'm so happy. I'm having the time of my life. It's the best time of my life. I'm 65 years old. I'm having the best time of my life right now, personally. I mean, there's children, there's all kind of other joys, but as far as me and what I do, it's the best time of my life right now. And I'm so validated and happy. And again, the McGlinn family and Carla and Philadelphia Stories, thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to read to you a little bit. When the baby's fever reached 105, they decided they could stand it no longer. The call to the pediatrician had reached an answering machine and they'd waited an hour, but the child was hot as a charcoal briquette and had recently begun vomiting a white mealy substance, a cross between grade school paste and cottage cheese that was unlike any spit-up they'd seen. Finally, they loaded the baby into the Volvo and drove to the emergency room. Thomas kept the accelerator to the floor and Allison sat in the back with their son. The boy cried hoarsely with each breath, and Allison asked as Thomas finally agreed the turkeys were to blame. "Let's not go off the deep end," he said. "We're not the doctor. When this is over, you're speaking to Danny Baker," she said, "and don't talk to me like I'm crazy." The emergency room doctor took the baby's temperature, now 106, and declared that the first order of business was to cool the child down. Seizures were a possibility if the fever remained that high. Thomas spent the next half hour lowering his screaming son again and again into cool water while a nurse tracked his temperature. The boy held tightly to him with arms and legs between soakings, and to get him free, Thomas had to break the child's hold each time. He found himself panting and crying with his son as Allison leaned against the wall in the mercilessly bright exam room, her face in her hands. When the fever dropped to 102, the nurse wrapped the child in a towel and laid him in his mother's arms, where he cried and then fell into a jerky, croaking sleep. The doctor, a ruddy man with watchful blue eyes, sat with them and asked how long the boy had been ill. "We think it's bird flu," Allison said. Thomas sighed and laid a hand on her arm. "Of course we don't know what it is, doctor. He's been listless for 2 days, no appetite, his diaper's soft and yellow. The fever came on late this morning and has been building all day." Allison swung toward him, the child against her breast like a shield. "I was on the patio with Declan 4 days ago," she said, "where we allowed turkeys, wild turkeys, to come right up to the house. He was on a blanket and I was reading, and I thought I swept all the disgusting droppings into the grass when I looked down and saw him playing with one of them. One of the bowel movements, I mean," she said. She glared at Thomas. It was at his mouth. Doctor's eyes darted between them. "This was good information," he said, "though bird flu was doubtful. Despite what you hear in the news, the transmission of avian influenza from bird to human is rare, and there are no reported cases in the United States. It's more likely your boy has a case of the everyday flu, although we'll need further—" "Can we at least acknowledge," Allison cried, "that a 5-month-old child handling bird shit is a bad idea? Can we at least acknowledge that?" She said bird shit so loudly the conversations outside the exam room went quiet. The doctor blinked and lifted his palms. "Yes," he said, Handling bird feces was never a good thing. Several illnesses might result from such contact, and knowing the child had done so would inform their testing. Allison's face crumpled and she began to weep so convulsively that Thomas took the baby from her and the nurse helped her to the examination table where she could lie down. In the hallway, the doctor put a hand on Thomas's shoulder. "This is hard on the both of you. That's perfectly understandable." Thomas sensed the man was prompting him to talk about Allison. He pressed his cheek against his son's hot forehead and whispered, "It's bad enough having Declan so miserable, but she always jumps to the worst. She's right to be concerned," the doctor said, dropping his hand to cup the baby's skull. "This boy is very sick." Allison had always been fearful, though there had been a time Thomas found her timidity appealing. She was blonde and honey-skinned and an inch taller than he, and she walked with the loping, pigeon-toed stride of a model on the runway. Her father owned 3 restaurants in Chicago and had played outfield a season for the White Sox, and he'd made it clear in word and deed that his daughter deserved better than a high school math teacher. When Allison turned girlish and needy, it solved a raw spot in Thomas's pride. Once, soon after they are engaged, she made a roast beef dinner at her apartment, and when they sat down, she asked if he would light the candles. When he looked at her curiously, she told him she'd never struck a match in her life. "Daddy always did it when we were little," she said. And then later on, it became like a family custom, and before you know it, I'm in high school and college, and she shrugged her shoulders and laughed. "I've still never done it." Thomas lit the candles and savored knowing he'd taken the old lion's place. He bent to kiss Allison's lovely cheeks in the firelight and said if she needed someone to strike matches for the rest of her life, he would be that man. And he meant it. But in the 4 years since, her qualms and boundaries had begun to eat at him. If he stood at an open refrigerator door longer than 10 seconds, she worried the pork chops would spoil and give them all trichinosis. If they were sitting on the patio in the evening and a bat flew overhead, she bolted for the house for fear the creature would tangle itself in her hair, leaving Thomas to sit alone or gather the wine glasses and follow her inside. But whenever he'd explained the flaws in her thinking, the few times he tried to help her face her fears logically, there had been hell to pay. Shortly after he'd begun his teaching job, they spent a weekend in the city with another couple and visited the Sears Tower, where the observation deck promised a view of 4 states from its 1,300-foot perch. Better yet, you reached it by one of the world's fastest elevators. Allison stood at the ticket booth reading the description and biting her lip, but when their friend suggested going for it, she shook her head. Thomas had drunk a second beer at lunch, and he laughed more loudly than he'd intended and said, "Of course not. We could all die." Allison scowled at him and walked away in the Wacker Drive lobby, with her arms folded across her fat chest. He followed her, loaded with righteousness more than regret, and their argument in front of a Baskin-Robbins had clerks staring and mothers gathering their toddlers close. "You didn't have to embarrass me," she said when he caught up with her and took her elbow. She shook him off and stared at the travertine floor. "Do just one thing for me," he said. "Admit that this is ludicrous. On an intellectual level at least, admit there's nothing to be afraid of. You treat me like a child." Thomas's voice took on a tone he used in the classroom. "A child gives in to irrational fears, but an adult knows better. An adult knows there's near 0 chance the elevator will malfunction. An adult knows her chin snapped up. I know if you don't leave me alone, I'll claw your eyes out. That's what I know." He shook his head. "Have you ever once considered facing your demons and telling them to fuck off?" She startled him by smiling. "Fuck off," she said.